Capitol Hill is abuzz tonight as Congress is back now from their very long summer break. They've got about a dozen days of work, essentially, before the next break, so they better get cracking, and hopefully they did their summer reading. Did your kids do their summer reading? I hope they did, too. Funding Harvey relief was one of the titles. Raising the debt ceiling, avoiding a government shutdown. Tax reform is front and center as well. So just hours ago, the president sat down with the Big Six, as they are known. They're the main central people who are working on getting this thing done. Tax reform. Here's the president.
We pay the highest tax of any country in the world on businesses, and we can't keep doing that. This is more than just tax reform. This is tax cutting, to put it in a very simple term. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to reduce taxes for people, for individuals, for middle-income families. We're going to reduce taxes for companies, and those companies are going to produce jobs.
Tony Sayegh is Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs for the Treasury Department. He is playing a crucial role in the administration's push for public and political support of tax reform. Tony, good to see you.
Martha, great to be with you and your viewers. Thanks for having me.
So obviously, you know, the president has been very passionate about cutting taxes. He said he wants to see the corporate rate go to 15%. How likely is that?
Well, look, we've been making great progress since the administration announced our core principles on tax reform back in April, and we made it very clear that the focus is on the individual side to simplify taxes, give middle-income families meaningful tax cuts, and on the business side, make it more competitive for our businesses to compete globally, and certainly then reinvest to create and grow business here in America. We have a tax code and a tax system, Martha, that is so counterintuitive, and it undermines the American worker. It undermines the idea of American competition. It forces much of our profits, trillions in some numbers, overseas and offshore. And we have this high corporate rate that was set decades ago, and while the world changed, we never did.
No,
so if
absolutely.
we want to achieve real meaningful relief for workers and families, this is going to start with real tax reform and tax cuts.
You know, I mean, every year there are tax cuts, loopholes, things that are added to this tax code, and they never go away. In fact, I read recently that the CBO, when they score revenue, they have the expiration date for these tax changes that were put into place. But of course, the little dirty secret is that when the end of the year rolls around, they get extended every single time. So I think people feel like they've heard so much about this for so many years. It's one of the most universally accepted ideas, is that people want a postcard-size tax form that they're going to fill out. But the same thing happens time and time again, Tony, and you know as well as I do, that they say, oh, well, we're going to do a little tax cut. We're not going to do tax reform, but, you know, next year is going to be a great time to do tax reform. Is that going to happen again?
Look, there's a reason it hasn't happened in 31 years. There's a lack of political will, and frankly, there's been obstruction throughout the decades. Most people who oppose tax reform say it's going to only benefit the wealthy and the well-connected. Well, the existing tax system only benefits the wealthy and well-connected, which is why over 60% of Americans feel the economic system is rigged against them. And that's why a central part of our tax reform and tax cut package is going to include the elimination, sweeping elimination, of loopholes and deductions that frankly only benefit the very few. We are going to protect mortgage interest. We want to protect charitable. Right. We're going to be very concerned about retirement savings as well. But everything else is on the table, Martha, and it's going to work through the process because we need to make this a much fairer and equalizing tax system where everybody in America benefits and everybody has a greater economic opportunity to achieve the American dream. That's not happening in the current system.
So what about the deficit? I mean, are you committed to making this a revenue-neutral plan? And if you want to get it through on 51 votes, it's pretty much going to have to be.
Look, we are very concerned about the deficit. It doubled in the 8 years of Barack Obama. Clearly, we have an eye toward that. We think, though, growth is going to be the force multiplier here. A point of growth, going from 2 to 3% growth, is trillions in revenue to the federal government in over 10 years. It's millions of jobs that we can create in that amount of time. That increases economic growth and sustains it in a way that really does benefit the revenue of the federal government and, frankly, all Americans. Because when we have the kind of growth we've had for the last 8 years, and you know this well, Martha, as someone who's covered the markets, we've had suboptimal growth of around 2%. And that's why the vast majority of Americans don't feel that their economic position in this country has improved at all. It's certainly improved for Wall Street. It's improved for wealthy, well-connected companies. It's not improved for the average, hardworking American.
You've got a GDP up 3%, first time in decades, and the market's up 20%. There's clearly momentum there, so we'll see where this thing goes. Tony, good to see you. We'll see you soon, I hope.
Great to see you.